energy technologies. Now we're just going to have a quick look at how much they cost. Now the Bible for how much renewable energy costs in Australia is the thing I've got up there called the Australian Energy Technology Assessment. It's done by a Commonwealth agency called BRE, the Bureau of Resource and Energy Economics, and they put out this energy technology assessment which basically looks at the costs of various forms of energy. So this slide and the next one shows what is called the levelized cost of electricity for a variety of technologies. Now the levelized cost of electricity is an interesting concept because what it says is that what it tries to measure is that over the life of the piece of equipment that's going in there, what is the average price of electricity? The reason why it's necessary to do that is if you look at something like, say, a gas-fired gas turbine, particularly ones that use jet engines, gas turbines to generate the electricity, they are actually very cheap to install, say in dollars per kilowatt of power they can produce. But of course, in order to produce that electricity, they have to burn natural gas, which is quite expensive. If you look at the other end of the spectrum with something like solar panels or wind turbines, they're very expensive to install, but they don't cost anything to run. And what the levelized cost of electricity attempts to do is level that playing field. So, and if you look at that graph, the things that are in green are the renewable energy technologies. The ones that are in red are the conventional fossil fuel ones. And you can still see that a lot of the renewable ones are still pretty expensive, but that there are some, such as onshore wind turbines on the land, which are starting to be comparable in price to coal-fired power stations. Now you may recall a few minutes ago I said that solar PV is cost-effective, and if you look at that graph you could say, well, how could that be? Because solar PV is more expensive, a lot more expensive than say a coal-fired power station, and that's because the one thing about solar PV is you can install it what's called on your side of the electricity meter. Because as you probably have picked up on, a lot of the cost and a lot of the cause of the rises in electricity prices has been because of installations, investment in the networks, in the poles and wires. Now, when you install a solar PV system on your side of the meter, you, as well as not paying for the running of the generator, you're not paying for the poles and wires, so that the cost of electricity supplied to you is a lot more than what you see there. You know, you see $100 per megawatt hour, which is about 10 cents a kilowatt hour, whereas you may be buying electricity for 25 cents a kilowatt hour because the rest of it is the cost of the poles and wires. So if you're using solar PV and you're not paying for the poles and wires, you are well ahead of the cost of purchased electricity. Now moving ahead with this second one, which is starting to look at the levelized costs in 2020, there you start to see a few more of the renewable energy, the ones in 2020, but a few more of the levelized costs of renewable energy are becoming comparable in price to power generated from coal-fired power stations and that sort of thing. So you can see on the prices for onshore wind and simple solar PV are, you know, at the bottom end of those scales are starting to be comparable in price to coal-fired power stations, even if you're doing it out in the desert and having to use the poles and wires to get the electricity to end users. So when that starts to happen,